There are thoughts that enter your mind like whispers, quiet, subtle, almost dismissible. And yet, once they arrive, they never truly leave. They settle into the cracks of your consciousness, refusing to be unthought. These are the thoughts that twist, tangle, and turn reality into a strange mirror of itself. They're not just questions with no answers. They're paradoxes that question the questions themselves. This video is a descent into those very paradoxes, the kind of mental knots that once formed, you can't quite untie. Some will make you doubt your memories. Others will make you question whether you ever had control in the first place. A few may even make you wonder if you were ever truly you. So, dim the lights, put on your headphones, and let yourself spiral into the infinite corridors of the mind, because once you've heard these thoughts, you'll never unhear them. There's a smile you've worn before, one that felt hollow even as your cheeks lifted and your lips curled. A smile that didn't bloom from joy, but from expectation, from habit, from the need to appear okay when every part of you was trembling inside. And maybe, just maybe, you've worn it so often that you've forgotten what a real one feels like. But here's the paradox. The smile knows. It knows it's not real. It knows it's pretending. And it watches you, the wearer, with something eerily close to awareness. It stretches across your face like a mask. But beneath that mask is a strange duality. A mind smiling outwardly while screaming inwardly. What happens when the performance becomes the identity? When the fake smile becomes the default and eventually the only one you can make? Over time, the line between the real and the performed begins to blur, and you start to wonder if there ever was a genuine version of you at all. Children smile instinctively. Their joy is raw, unfiltered. But adults learn the other kind of smile, the social one, the one that says, "I'm fine," even when nothing is. It's armor, it's strategy, it's survival. And yet, with each passing year, it hardens into something deeper, almost sentient. The lie wears your face so often, it starts to forget it's lying. And so do you. You sit in rooms with people, smiling at their jokes, nodding, on cue, but feeling more like a character in a play than a person in a life. The smile performs for them, but it whispers behind your eyes, "This isn't who we are." The paradox is that the more you smile, the more invisible you become. Not to others, but to yourself. You begin to ask, if I smiled in every photo, but felt nothing, did those moments really happen to me? Did I live them, or just pose through them? And if your expression contradicts your truth, which one will history remember? Worse still, what if the smile outlives you? You pass through time, but the smiling photos remain. To anyone looking back, you seemed happy, you seemed fulfilled. The lie becomes your legacy, and in a way, that makes the lie real, doesn't it? The smile that knows it's lying is a paradox, because it doesn't just cover pain. It becomes its own kind of truth, a second skin, a version of yourself that never breaks, never complains, and never falters. It's the version the world prefers, the version you learn to present, but beneath that layer is someone waiting to be seen. Someone still wondering if there's a face underneath the mask, or if the mask became the face. And here's the haunting part. The longer you wear it, the less you'll know the difference. So the next time you feel a smile spread across your face, ask yourself quietly, not why you're smiling, but who is. There's a strange moment when your mind turns inward, not to remember, but to escape. Not to revisit the past, but to erase it, to unthink what it knows, to forget itself. But how can the mind, which is the very seat of memory, desire to abandon its own contents. This is where the paradox begins, a mind trying to forget itself. You've likely felt it before, that urge to leave behind a version of you can't stand to carry anymore, a regret that sits too heavy, a thought that plays too loud. You don't want to remember, you want to vanish from inside your own head. But here's the twist. The more you try to forget something, the more embedded it becomes. It's called ironic process theory. The mind doesn't process, don't think about it, as silence. It hears only the thing you're trying to unhear. Like being told not to picture a white elephant. There it is, instantly, uninvited. So, when the mind wants to forget itself, it paradoxically stares even deeper into its reflection. And what is the mind, really, if not a mirror house of thoughts layered upon thoughts? Each memory is stitched into another. Each idea is rooted in something you felt or feared or hoped for. How can it cut out the thread without unraveling the whole tapestry? Some people try to drown it with distraction, scrolling endlessly, working obsessively, surrounding themselves with noise. But even then, in the silence between sounds, the forgotten tries to resurface. The mind folds in on itself, sneaking reminders in dreams, in slips of speech, in déjà vu that feels like a trapdoor to the thing you thought was gone. And even more haunting, what if the mind succeeds in forgetting itself? What remains? A body with no narrative? A face with no name? Would you still be you without your memories, your traumas, your stories? Or is the self only an illusion, a character built from accumulated thoughts? Now imagine this. What if some part of you has already been forgotten? Not just by others, but by your own mind. Memories that sank so deep, they're now unrecognizable, yet still shape your fears, your desires, your behavior. The forgotten, controlling the remembered. Sometimes forgetting is mercy. Sometimes it's survival. The mind creates mental scar tissue to protect itself. But even scar tissue remembers where the wound was. And this is what makes the paradox so twisted. The mind wants to escape itself, but can't escape without also erasing the very you that wants the escape. It is both the prisoner and the warden. So, what do we do with the parts of ourselves we can't unthink? Maybe we learn to sit with them, to let the memories breathe without letting them drown us. Maybe the mind doesn't need to forget itself to be free. Maybe it needs to make peace with what it remembers. But still, on quiet nights, you'll feel it. That flicker of desperation. That whispered plea in your own voice. I want to stop thinking. I want to forget. And the paradox is, in the very moment you say it, you've already remembered too much, because the mind can't unknow that it wants to forget. And now, neither can you. You open your eyes. The light is soft. The room looks just as you remember it. The texture of the walls, the shape of your hands, the distant sound of something familiar. Everything feels real. But beneath it all, there's a question you can't shake. What if this is a dream that thinks it's awake? That's the paradox. Not a dream within a dream, but a dream that believes it's awake. A false awakening so convincing that it begins to doubt the concept of dreaming at all. It doesn't know it's not real, because it thinks it already woke up. You've likely felt this before. You dream that you've gotten out of bed, brushed your teeth, made coffee, only to later wake up again for real, stunned by how believable the illusion was. In that moment, you couldn't tell the difference between fiction and reality. The dream knew it was awake, until it wasn't. But now stretch this further. What if this very moment, this sentence, this breath, this heartbeat is part of another dream layer? What if your entire life has been a dream thinking it was real? If that makes you uneasy, it should, because this paradox doesn't rely on floating chairs or melting clocks to signal that it's unreal. It mimics everything flawlessly: logic, memory, emotion, physics. You remember a childhood, you have goals, regrets, relationships, all part of the dream's architecture. And yet none of it proves that you're awake. The scariest dreams are the ones that look exactly like real life. And here's where the paradox deepens. A dream that thinks it's awake has no tools to prove otherwise. It trusts its memory. It trusts its senses. It trusts the passage of time. But what if time, memory, and sensation are part of the dream too? You might say, if this were a dream, things would be more surreal. But who says dreams must be bizarre? Maybe your mind learned to simulate normalcy perfectly. Maybe this is the ultimate lucid dream, one where the dreamer forgot they were dreaming. Some philosophers argue that you can never truly prove you're not dreaming. You can stack logic, evidence, experience, but all of that could still be occurring within a dream. Reality in that sense becomes a consensus hallucination, a shared dream, or worse, your own private one. You might be wondering, why does it matter? It matters because this paradox reminds us how little we understand the boundary between consciousness and reality. If your mind can generate a world that feels real while you sleep, then how much of your waking world is simply interpretation? How much is trust in the illusion? A dream that thinks it's awake isn't terrifying because it's fantastical. It's terrifying because it's indistinguishable from real life. It teaches us that certainty is a luxury we assume, but rarely verify. And even now, as you sit with this thought, some small part of you might be asking, what if I wake up after this? What if this is the layer before the real one? But maybe it's not about waking up or proving reality. Maybe it's about humility, about accepting that your perception is a story your brain tells to make sense of patterns, and sometimes that story can be wrong. The dream doesn't have to be fake to matter. Whether awake or dreaming, the feeling is real. The questions are real, and perhaps that's enough. So the next time you find yourself doubting your surroundings, don't panic. Smile gently, because even if this is a dream, it's thinking and wondering, and that's a sign of consciousness. Even if the consciousness isn't quite awake, you stand in front of a mirror, you see your face, your eyes, the subtle movements of your expression. It's you, or at least it's supposed to be. But then you pause, you look deeper, not just at your face, but at the awareness behind the eyes, and suddenly it feels like someone else is staring back, a stranger, hiding in your reflection. This paradox unravels the quiet terror of identity, the unsettling idea that the version of yourself you see, the one that reflects your emotions, thoughts, and choices, might not be the real you, or worse, that it is the real you, and the person you believe yourself to be is the illusion. When you look in a mirror, you're not just seeing a body, you're seeing everything you think you are, compressed into a gaze, your memories, your personality, your past and potential future. But how can you be sure that what's reflected is actually you? You've changed over time. The person in your childhood photos isn't the same as the one who stands here now. Your voice, your beliefs, your goals, they've all shifted. If you met your 10-year-old self today, you might not even get along. That old version is gone. And the current one? It's changing even now as you read this. So which one is the real you? The mirror doesn't lie. It shows exactly what's there, and maybe that's what makes it so disturbing. Because sometimes what's there feels unfamiliar, as if your face is wearing you, not the other way around. It becomes even stranger when you realize that you never truly see yourself, not directly. You see reflections, photos, interpretations, but your actual face? You've never witnessed it the way others do. Your image is always filtered through glass, through time, through perception. And perception is biased. Your mind fills in gaps. It constructs a stable sense of self, even when that self is crumbling. It tells you you're consistent, that you're you. But the reflection might disagree. Maybe the mirror catches the flicker of doubt in your smile, the hesitation behind your eyes, the part of you that wonders if you're just pretending to be a person you once were, or trying to become someone you're not. Here's where the paradox digs deeper. The reflection behaves like you, but it can't know you. It mimics your expressions in real time, but it doesn't know your thoughts. It's perfectly synced, yet entirely separate. That version of you exists only in glass, an echo, trapped in the surface, staring out. And maybe, just maybe, it's watching you too. There's something inherently unsettling about sustained eye contact with yourself. If you've ever stared too long into your reflection, you know the feeling. The moment when your face stops being familiar, when it begins to look alien. That's the stranger. That's the version of you that's been waiting to be noticed. We think of mirrors as tools for self-recognition, but maybe they're doorways. Maybe the person you think you are is just one of many selves, layered, fluid, and flickering in and out depending on the lighting, the mood, or the need to survive. So who are you really? The one who acts? The one who watches? The one in the mirror? Or the one wondering if all of this is just a trick of the mind? Because when you stand in front of that glass too long, something strange happens. You stop recognizing yourself. And the reflection, it keeps staring. And in that moment, you can't help but feel like someone else is looking out from behind your eyes. Someone you don't remember becoming. Someone who's been waiting, patiently, to be let in. There is a mercy in forgetting. But what if that mercy was denied? Imagine a mind that remembers everything, every sound, every face, every wrong, every whisper in the dark that you wished would disappear. A memory that does not filter, does not prioritize, does not soften with time. It remembers too much. And it remembers you in ways you've tried to forget. At first, it might seem like a gift. Perfect recall. No lost moments. No fading love. But perfection always comes at a price. Because forgetting isn't just an accident. It's a survival mechanism. We forget so we can function. So we aren't haunted by every embarrassment, every heartbreak, every grief we couldn't carry all at once. A memory that remembers too much becomes its own prison. Where most people's memories degrade, blur, and decay into hazy images and softened sounds, this one sharpens with time. You don't just remember the breakup. You remember the look on their face, the smell of the air, the precise crack in your voice when you said the wrong thing. It replays like it's happening now. And again. And again. There is no it's in the past in this mind. The past is a room you live in permanently. And in this paradox, time doesn't heal. It loops. Now imagine what it does to your sense of self if every mistake, every version of you from years ago is preserved and fully alive within you. Which one is the real you? Are you the you who regrets? Or the you who acted? Or the observer who sees them both and can't choose? You try to grow, You try to evolve, but the past doesn't let go. It clings to you like wet clothing, like a whisper in your ear that won't stop reminding you of what you could have done differently, who you could have been. Some days, even joy becomes unbearable, because it, too, is remembered too vividly. The happiest moments, laughing with someone who's now gone, holding a hand you'll never hold again. These memories are no longer gifts, they are ghosts. You don't visit them. They visit you, and they stay. The paradox deepens when you realize that memory shapes identity. But if your memory never lets anything fade, who are you actually becoming? A mosaic of contradictions. A tangle of every emotion you've ever felt, stacked on top of each other like unread letters. There is no clean slate, no moving on, only layers. And the cruelest twist, the world around you forgets. People forget what they said, what they did, what they meant. They move on. But you remember every word, every silence. You hold it like a blade, not by choice, but because you can't put it down. So is a flawless memory a gift? Or a curse disguised as clarity? Maybe forgetting isn't the weakness we think it is. Maybe it's grace, the mind's way of making room for tomorrow, because to remember too much is to never truly leave yesterday behind. You open your mouth to speak, but something feels off. The words form, the sound escapes, yet it doesn't feel like you. It's your voice technically, same pitch, same tone, but somehow wrong. It's like hearing yourself in a recording and thinking, that can't be me. But this time, it doesn't stop. Every sentence, every whisper, every scream, it all feels like it came from someone else. Someone living inside you, pretending to be you. This is the paradox of the voice that doesn't belong to you. We assume our voice is ours. It's the most immediate form of identity. But how much of it is shaped by imitation, by our parents, teachers, strangers on screens? Do you really speak with your own voice? Or are you an echo of everyone who has ever spoken before you? As a child, your voice was wild, unfiltered, and pure. But over time, it changed. You were told to speak up, or be quiet, to be more polite, less emotional, more professional, and you adjusted, slowly silencing the raw edges of who you were to become something more acceptable. And now, that acceptable version speaks for you, even when you're alone. That voice, the one that doesn't feel like yours, is the result of 1,000 little edits. Every moment you swallowed your truth. Every time you said what was expected instead of what was honest. Every social cue you absorbed, every fear of being misunderstood shaped it. You built a voice for survival, but now it survives in your place. You hear it when you answer the phone and feel yourself becoming professional. You hear it when you smile through discomfort, pretending everything's fine. You hear it when you lie, not to deceive, but to avoid disappointing someone. And sometimes in the quiet moments you wonder, what would your real voice sound like? Here lies the paradox. The voice you use every day might not be the one that truly belongs to you. And when you realize that, you begin to question more. If your voice isn't yours, is your laughter, your sighs, your cries? How deep does the performance go? Maybe that's why some people lose themselves, not from trauma or tragedy, but from slowly giving away their voice to roles they thought they had to play. Student, worker, friend, partner. Each one demands a different version of you. Each one speaks a little differently, but if you were silent long enough, would your voice return to you? Would it sound strange? Or would it finally feel like coming home? Sometimes, reclaiming your voice means breaking through the layers, unlearning the reflex to speak what others want to hear, letting discomfort hang in the air instead of filling it with noise. Saying what you mean, not what's safe. But here's the unsettling truth. For some, the voice that doesn't belong to them isn't a metaphor. It's literal. In conditions like schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, voices emerge uninvited. Inner monologues fracture. The self is no longer unified, and the mind becomes a stage for voices it cannot control. So what if that's closer to all of us than we admit? We think we are one voice, one mind, one speaker behind the curtain. But what if you're just the listener? Maybe the voice you hear isn't yours, because there is no you speaking. Just thoughts arriving, wearing a mask you recognize. You speak every day, but who exactly is doing the speaking? You make a choice. You feel a moment of clarity, of control. But almost immediately, something inside you recoils. A whisper rises from deep within. That was the wrong one. Even if the outcome is fine, even if nothing goes wrong, the regret still lingers like an echo that refuses to fade. This is the paradox of the choice that always regrets itself. Every decision seems to carry a hidden shadow. You say yes, and wonder what would have happened if you said no. You walk away, and replay the moment you could have stayed. Even when everything turns out well, there's a version of you living in the parallel universe of what could have been, convinced that they got it right. But what if this isn't just overthinking? What if some choices are cursed to carry regret no matter what? Here's where it twists. The moment you choose, you erase all other possibilities. You destroy every path except the one you now walk. The paradox is that even a perfect choice feels like a loss. Not because it's wrong, but because it eliminates infinity. You didn't just choose one future, you killed all the others. And somewhere inside, you feel the weight of that burial. That's why regret doesn't always come from failure. Sometimes it comes from knowing there was never a perfect option, just a collection of trade-offs. You gave up freedom for stability, passion for safety, truth for peace. And even if you chose wisely, you still feel what was sacrificed. Your mind plays tricks too. It imagines the roads you didn't take as smooth, golden, flawless. It edits out the pain that could have been and exaggerates the joy that might have existed. It creates illusions of better outcomes to torment the self that made the call. The cruelest twist? Even if you went back and made the opposite choice, you'd likely regret that too. Because the part of you that regrets isn't responding to the decision itself, it's responding to the responsibility of having chosen. When things go wrong, you blame yourself. When they go right, you wonder if they could have gone better. It's a mind that loops endlessly on what cannot be undone. So you hesitate, you delay, you replay past decisions like they hold secrets. But no matter how many times you revisit them, they never change. Only your feelings do. And that shifting emotional landscape convinces you the decision was flawed, when in truth, it was simply final. Maybe the regret isn't in the choice, but in our relationship to choice itself. We want freedom, but not the burden of choosing. We want options, but not the responsibility of killing them off. And so we live in limbo, always moving forward while glancing backward, trapped between momentum and nostalgia. But here's the strange comfort in the paradox. Regret is a sign you care. It means the choice mattered. You were conscious, awake, aware that your actions ripple outward, that something real is at stake in how you move through the world. And maybe that's why some of the most powerful choices carry both pain and pride. Because they asked something of you. They demanded presence. They forced you to live with the consequences, not in fear, but in acceptance. You may always wonder, what if? But the truth is, even that wondering is a choice. And perhaps the more you live with your decisions without needing them to be perfect, the more you realize that regret isn't a flaw of the choice. It's just the cost of having one. There is a certain feeling that does not belong. It arrives uninvited, sits in silence, and when you try to name it, it shifts. Not sadness, not fear, not guilt. It hovers just beneath your skin like a phantom limb you never lost, aching for reasons you don't understand. It doesn't want your attention. It doesn't even want to be real. It only wants to disappear. But how do you let go of something that's already trying to let go of itself? This feeling doesn't speak in language. It lingers in half-formed thoughts and dreams you can't quite remember. You notice it in the stillness between moments, in the seconds after the laughter fades, in the pause between one breath and the next. It's not pain, not exactly. It's the awareness of something misplaced, as if a part of your soul is standing outside your life, unsure if it should enter. Most emotions beg to be felt. This one does not. It recoils from the spotlight. When you reach for it, it withdraws. When you ignore it, it curls up in the shadows and waits. It is a feeling that doesn't want to exist, not because it is weak, but because it knows it shouldn't be here at all. And yet, here it is. You try to trace its origin. Was it something you failed to do? Something you forgot? Or maybe it was, born in the moment, someone needed you, and you were too tired to care. Maybe it's the residue of all the lives you almost lived, all the truths you buried under politeness, all the screams you silenced with a smile. It's the emotion left behind. When nothing else fits, it becomes a weight without a name. It doesn't shout, but it shapes the way you move, the way you hesitate before joy, the way you blink just a second too long when someone says, "Are you okay?" And you want to say, "No." There is something inside me that doesn't want to be inside me. But how do you explain a ghost that haunts you from within? How do you describe a presence that insists on absence? So, you carry it. Not like a wound, but like a forgotten memory. You wrap your life around it, pretending not to notice how it shifts your center of gravity. You convince yourself that it's just part of being human, this ache without a name. But deep down, you know this isn't just a feeling. It's a paradox. It is something that exists only because it doesn't want to. It is the opposite of desire, the inversion of self-recognition. It is the whisper of a part of you trying to fade without being erased. And perhaps that's why it hurts, because what if this feeling is the truest part of you? What if everything else, the ambitions, the relationships, the carefully managed happiness, is just the distraction? What if this quiet ache is not an intruder, but a message from the version of you that never spoke, the version that didn't pretend, the version that felt everything too deeply to survive in the open, a feeling that doesn't want to exist, and yet somehow it's the only part that feels real. You sit with it now, not to fix it, not to solve it, but to listen. And in that silent space between thoughts, something happens. It doesn't vanish, but it stops hiding. Just for a moment, you see it for what it is. Not a weakness, not a flaw, but the shadow of a truth too deep for words. And that is where it stays. Between breaths, between lives, between the you that walks forward, and the you that was left behind. It begins with a whisper, a passing thought, a flicker in the corner of your awareness. You tell yourself it's nothing, just static, a mental glitch, a forgotten echo of something you didn't mean to notice. But it stays. It grows roots. At first, it pretends to be harmless, a question you casually revisit, an image you keep replaying. You don't know why. It's not profound. It's not urgent. It's just there, lingering, like a word stuck on the tip of your tongue, or a name you're certain you've never heard before, but still feels familiar. And then, without asking for permission, it becomes part of your day. It shows up in moments you need clarity, in silence, in distraction. It interrupts your joy, not with sorrow, but with a strange kind of weightless unease, a low hum in the background of every thought that follows. You try to shake it off, but it stays. You try to reason with it, but it doesn't argue. It doesn't respond. It only watches, like it knows you better than you know yourself. This thought doesn't belong to the logical mind. It doesn't care about right or wrong, true or false. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't even change shape. It just repeats. It's the same phrase, the same image, the same unsettling idea circling you like a predator that never pounces. You start to wonder, what gave birth to this thought? Did it come from a forgotten memory, a repressed feeling, or was it planted, accidentally or intentionally, by something you once read, saw, or believed? You'll never know, because this thought has no source, no anchor. It's like a shadow that appears without a light. You call it intrusive. You call it irrational. But no matter what you call it, it doesn't leave. You try the usual methods, distraction, meditation, logic, even silence. But it doesn't respond. It isn't looking for attention or analysis. It just wants to be. Sometimes, in a quiet moment, you catch yourself thinking that maybe this thought isn't just a nuisance. Maybe it's something more, something alive. Like it chose you. Like it's using your mind as a home, nesting in the crevices of your consciousness. It doesn't grow louder. It grows deeper, and then you begin to fear it. Not because it's dangerous, but because it might be true. Or worse, because it might define you. You start to ask, if a thought refuses to leave, is it still just a thought? Or does it become a part of who you are? You remember that old philosophical dilemma? Are we the ones thinking our thoughts, or are our thoughts thinking us? This one certainly seems to have a will of its own. It chooses when to appear. It chooses what to remind you of. It hijacks your silence and fills it with uncertainty. Not dramatic, not loud, just consistent. A persistent whisper that becomes a part of your inner voice. And when you finally try to speak of it, when you dare to confess, there's this thought I can't get rid of. You feel embarrassed, not because of what it is, but because of how powerless you are against it. How small it makes you feel. How easily it bypasses your defenses and nests behind your eyes. But maybe, just maybe, it refuses to leave because it hasn't been heard. Not truly. Maybe it's not trying to haunt you, but to free you. To say something you weren't ready to hear when it first arrived. So tonight, instead of fighting it, you sit with it. You stop asking it to leave. You ask it what it wants. And in that moment, for the first time, it says nothing. Because now it doesn't need to speak. You finally started listening. You wake up in your bed. Everything is where it should be. The light falls in the same direction it always does. The room smells faintly of morning dust and old wood. And yet, something isn't right. The door is your door, but the handle feels colder. The floor creaks differently beneath your feet. You walk past the mirror, but you don't look. Not because you're afraid of what you'll see, but because a strange part of you already knows it won't feel like yours. You step outside. The street has the same name, the same trees line the sidewalk, but the wind carries a silence that's unfamiliar. You glance at the faces passing by, and they glance at you, not with indifference, but with a subtle, confused hesitation. Like you're a stranger wearing someone else's outline. You try to anchor yourself. You check your phone. Same apps, same conversations, same memories. But even your own words sound foreign, like someone mimicking your tone, your phrasing, your identity, with just enough accuracy to fool the world, but not you. And that's when it hits you. Reality doesn't recognize you, not that it's broken or false. No, it's functioning perfectly, but it's not responding to you. It's not reflecting your presence. The world goes on, but not with you, around you. Like you're the ghost of a version that no longer fits. You test the boundaries. You speak to people. You smile, engage, play your part. They respond, but there's a gap. Subtle, invisible, unbridgeable. The rhythm is off. Their words land, but they don't meet you. You wonder if you're being paranoid, or if you're just waking up to something you've always ignored. Maybe it started with that one moment. So small you forgot it happened. A thought you resisted. A feeling you buried. A choice you never made. And ever since then, your path slowly diverged from the one that was meant to recognize you. You begin to feel like an actor who never learned their lines but was still shoved on stage. And yet, no one notices. Because the illusion isn't theirs to break. It's yours. You wander deeper into the day, hoping to find a reflection of yourself in something, anything, a memory, a flavor, a scent, a sound. But everything slips just out of reach, like reality is on a delay. You press your hand against the wall just to feel something solid. But even that feels performative, like the wall is pretending to be what it's always been. You ask yourself, is it me who's changed, or the world? But then you remember the deeper question, the one you always avoid. Was this world ever really yours? Maybe you've only been borrowing this version of reality, passing through it like a visitor in a museum, carefully curated to reflect a story you wanted to believe. And now the exhibit is closing. The dream is ending. The story no longer needs you, and yet you remain. Not gone, not erased, but unacknowledged. Like a word written in invisible ink, still there, just unread. So you stop. You stop trying to make it recognize you. You sit in the stillness, in the disconnect, in the space between what is and what was supposed to be. And you ask the only question that matters now. If reality doesn't recognize you, then who are you without it? And in that silent, suspended moment, when nothing mirrors back your existence, you feel something new begin. Not a panic, not a revelation, just a presence, your own, not defined by the world, not reflected in its eyes, but alive, independent, unanchored, and unrecognized. Finally free. You walk into a room you've never been in before, but something about it feels familiar. Not in the way déjà vu teases the mind, but in a quieter, deeper way, like a whisper of something left behind. The chair in the corner, the shape of the window, the sound the clock makes. It all feels like it remembers something you don't. As if the present is layered, folded upon itself, and beneath the surface, something older is watching. You reach for a book on the shelf and feel a strange hesitation. Why? It's just a book. But your fingers pause as if disturbing it would stir something dormant. You pull it out anyway, and a thin cloud of dust rises. The pages are blank, except faint impressions, like someone wrote something long ago and erased it. But the paper remembers. That's when you start noticing it everywhere. Not memories, not flashbacks, echoes, the way someone says your name that makes you flinch, even though they didn't mean it that way. The smell of rain on concrete, which makes your chest tighten, though you don't know why. A song comes on, and you know every note, every word, but you've never heard it before. The past doesn't always knock. Sometimes it hides inside. The present. Disguised. Camouflaged. Waiting. It doesn't announce itself with clarity. It seeps in. A tone in someone's voice that reminds you of a long-forgotten scolding. A flickering shadow that mimics the posture of someone who hurt you. A smile that resembles the one you tried so hard to forget. And suddenly you realize time doesn't move forward. It coils, it burrows, it loops in silence. You are not simply moving through time, you are dragging it with you. Not just the stories you remember, but the ones your body does. The ones your mind discarded, but your bones could not. The ones that still breathe behind every word you speak. You start wondering how much of what you call now is really just the past in costume. How many of your decisions are echoes of old fears. How many of your preferences are shaped by forgotten pains? How much of your identity is a defense against a moment that never truly ended? You sit in silence. Try to clear your mind. But the silence isn't empty. It's saturated. It carries the weight of what wasn't said, of apologies you never received, of emotions you never named, of people you never got to be. You realize the present is not clean. It is not a blank page. It is a palimpsest, layers upon layers of moments, written over but never fully erased. And the past is clever. It doesn't just hide. It acts. It pretends to be your instinct, your intuition, your truth. It says, this is just who you are. But it isn't. It's who you became when the wound needed to survive. You think you're reacting to this moment, but you're not. You're reacting to 10, 20, 30 moments ago. They just wear different masks now, and so the question arises, can you ever experience the present truly, without the fingerprints of the past coloring every thought, every feeling, every breath? Perhaps the past can't be erased, but maybe it can be unmasked. Not banished, but acknowledged. Not forgotten, but seen for what it is. A shadow that only loses power when you finally face it. You look around the room again, still unfamiliar. But this time, you recognize the familiarity for what it is. Not coincidence, not magic. Just the quiet truth that the past never truly leaves. It just hides, waiting for the present to finally look back. You look in the mirror, and for a moment, just a split second, you see someone else. Not a stranger, not entirely, but someone adjacent to you. A version of you that might have been, or maybe once was. You blink, and it's gone, but the unease remains. There's something fragile about the person staring back. Not physically, not in expression, but in definition, as if your identity isn't carved in stone, but scribbled in pencil, smudged, rewritten again. Who are you really? The question haunts more than it should, because you've had answers before. Labels, roles. I am this. I do that. I believe in this. But time has a cruel habit of eroding certainty. Things you once believed to be fundamentally, you aren't anymore. Some were discarded by choice. Others slipped away without permission. Still others were never yours to begin with. And so you try again. You update the definition. You adapt to the new self. But just when you think you've arrived at something solid, something true, the ground shifts again. A new experience, a new realization, a new contradiction. And suddenly, who you are begins to blur. It feels like chasing a shadow that never holds still. Your identity is not a statue. It's a river, flowing, changing, carrying things, losing things, and sometimes drowning in itself. There are days when you feel like a stranger in your own skin. You catch yourself acting in ways that don't match who you thought you were. You laugh at things you once feared. You fear things you once loved. You say things you don't quite believe, just to see how they sound coming out of your mouth. And in those moments, the world doesn't feel like it's lying to you. You feel like the lie, not in a malicious way, but in that quiet, disturbing sense that the person people think you are and the person you feel like aren't quite aligned, because identity isn't stable. It's a story told in chapters, and you're the unreliable narrator. Memory edits the past. Emotion colors the present. Desire distorts the future. What remains constant? Perhaps nothing. And maybe that's what's most terrifying. You realize you're not becoming who you're meant to be. You're becoming whoever you need to be in that moment. And the moment keeps changing. You're the child when around your parents, the mentor when someone younger looks up to you, the rebel in the face of authority, the conformist when silence feels safer, the philosopher at night, the cynic by morning. And somewhere between all these roles, something flickers. Not a truth, not a lie, just a voice that says, maybe I'm all of them, maybe I'm none. So, what does that make you? A shapeshifter? Chameleon or something more tragic? A blank page constantly overwritten until even the original ink has vanished. You begin to understand why identity crises are not rare. They are necessary. They are not failures. They are symptoms of consciousness trying to reconcile contradiction. And perhaps the real question is not, who am I? But rather, who am I right now? And will that be enough until the next page turns? Because the rewriting never ends. Not until the story does. And even then, maybe not. There are moments when silence says more than words ever could. Not the kind of silence that comforts. Not the peaceful quiet of a still morning, or the hush before sleep. This silence is different, sharp, intrusive, inescapable. It presses in, like a question you don't want to answer, a presence that demands to be felt, even when nothing is spoken. You've heard it before, in a conversation that suddenly stopped mid-sentence, in a room where no one dared to speak the obvious, in the long pause after someone asked, "Are you okay?" And you nodded, even though you weren't. That silence, it knows. It carries everything that words avoid, every truth we bury, every feeling we deny. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It just sits there, humming with unbearable honesty. Sometimes it happens when you're alone, sitting in the dark. No distractions, no noise. Just you and the thoughts you pretend not to have. You think you're fine, until the silence begins to echo back your deepest uncertainties. That's when you feel it, not with your ears, but in your chest. A tightness, a stirring, a pressure without sound. Because silence, when it's real, doesn't just lack words, it devours them. It exposes the lies we keep alive through constant chatter. It shines a cold light on all the things left unsaid, not just to others, but to yourself. You try to fill it with music, with conversation, with movement, anything to avoid that quiet confrontation. But the silence waits. It waits until you're too tired to resist, too alone to distract, too aware to lie. And when it finds you like that, it tells you the truth. Not gently, not kindly, but clearly. It tells you about the decisions you're avoiding, the person you're pretending to be, the love you never admitted, the pain you never processed, the dreams you left behind and never mourned. It tells you that, deep down, you already know the answer to the question you keep asking everyone else. You just don't like what it says. Because silence has no agenda. It doesn't try to comfort you. It doesn't want you to feel better. It just reveals, strips away, until you're left with what's real. And that's the paradox. We run from silence because we fear what it might reveal. But at the same time, we crave it, because in a world full of noise, of constant projection and performance, silence is the only thing that doesn't pretend. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, but it's honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is a kind of freedom. So the next time you sit in silence and feel that creeping discomfort rising inside, don't rush to fill it. Listen. It might not scream with sound, but it screams with truth. And sometimes, that's the only voice worth hearing. There's someone out there who looks exactly like you, but it's not your reflection. It's not your twin. It's you, rewritten by choices you didn't make. They wake up at the same time, in a slightly different room. They wear clothes you never picked, shaped by habits you never formed. They smile differently. They speak with a confidence or a caution you never developed. But deep inside, they carry the same origin, the same beginning, a spark that split from yours before diverging forever. You think you know yourself, your likes, your limits, your beliefs. But that knowing is carved only by the paths you've taken, not by the infinite roads you turned away from. Somewhere in the silence of those rejected moments, an entire self was born, a version of you who said yes when you said no, who stayed when you left, who fought when you surrendered, or who walked away when you clung too tightly. This other you is not a fantasy. It's not fiction. It's the logical conclusion of decisions you almost made. It's what you would have become if even one variable had shifted. And yet, they remain invisible, haunting the edges of your memory like a ghost of unrealized identity. Have you ever felt it? A sense of strangeness while doing something you should enjoy, a moment of discomfort in a life that fits, but not entirely, a fleeting ache for something you can't name. That's them, the version of you you've never met. They live not in the future or past, but in the elsewhere of now, a parallel thread of possibility, always running beside you, just out of reach. You sense them most clearly during quiet moments, when the noise fades, when your phone is off and your performance pauses. In that stillness, their presence leaks through, a flicker of thought that feels foreign yet familiar, a reaction you didn't choose but could have. Maybe they're happier, maybe not. Maybe they carry a burden you avoided, or maybe they're freer, lighter, unafraid of things that still paralyze you. And here's the twist. They wonder about you too, because from their perspective, you're the alternate. The dream they didn't chase, the person they never became. They too feel that tug at night, that suspicion that there's a different self walking somewhere. Not better or worse, just different. It's not envy. It's not regret. It's a strange kind of nostalgia for something that never happened. A quiet yearning for a conversation you can never have, with the version of yourself you'll never meet. But maybe that's the point. Maybe your identity isn't fixed. Maybe it's a fluid field of selves, unfolding with every choice, collapsing into the one you call you. And in recognizing the ones you're not, you come closer to understanding who you are, not as a single permanent being, but as a constant unfolding. So the next time you feel out of place in your own life, pause. Don't panic. That discomfort isn't failure. It's a knock on the door from another you, a reminder that your path is one of many, that who you are is still being written, and that behind the veil of every decision is a self who still matters, even if you'll never shake their hand, because the version of you you've never met is still part of you. It begins like all beliefs do, with certainty. A quiet confidence that something is true, real, stable. You hold it close, build upon it, let it guide your choices, your identity, your sense of the world. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, it begins to fold inward, like a serpent circling back toward its tail. This is not just doubt. This is the belief that consumes its own foundation. Imagine standing on a bridge, only to realize the bridge is made of thoughts you yourself created. Every step forward shakes the planks beneath you. You believe the bridge is there, so it is. But if you question it too much, it disappears. The more you look, the less there is to stand on. This is the kind of belief that doesn't tolerate too much light. It hides in the comfort of being unchallenged. But when examined, when truly interrogated, it begins to crack under its own logic. It says, "Trust me." But when you ask why, it replies, "Because I said so." Faith eating reason. Reason swallowing itself. It's a loop, a recursive system where belief depends on belief to justify itself. And once you notice the loop, you can't unsee it. Like a thought that whispers, "What if everything I believe is only true because I need it to be?" Take any belief, your sense of self, your morality, your purpose. Trace it backward, and eventually, you'll hit a wall. A point where reason stops and assumption begins. Some core conviction you never really chose, but simply absorbed, perhaps from your parents, your culture, your fear of chaos. Now try to remove it. What happens? Does your world unravel? This paradox doesn't scream, it whispers, quietly eroding the pillars you thought were eternal. It questions the questioner, doubts the doubt, until every answer leads back to itself, and you're left circling the same void with different names. You try to rebuild, to anchor yourself in something solid, but every structure is made from the same raw material, thought. And thought is fragile. It molds to emotion, bends to memory, distorts with fear. Belief that eats itself doesn't destroy you in a moment. It erodes you over time, like rust on the edges of clarity. And yet, here's the trap. You need belief to function, to love, to act, to choose. But if you believe too deeply without question, you risk delusion. If you question too deeply without trust, you spiral into nihilism. So where do you stand? Somewhere in between. But even that is a belief in balance, a belief in the middle path. And once again, you see the circle form. This paradox is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be felt, lived, navigated. Like walking a tightrope where both faith and doubt pull at either arm, threatening to unbalance you with every step. You are not weak for questioning. You are not foolish for believing. You are simply human, caught in a system that questions itself, dreams of truth, and fears the silence beneath. So what do you do when belief eats itself? You watch, you breathe, you continue. Not because you've found the final answer, but because you accept the dance, the eternal recursion, the paradox that reveals not just the limits of logic, but the necessity of hope. Because sometimes the only thing more dangerous than believing without reason is refusing to believe at all. Have you ever stopped to wonder if the world is hiding something from you? Not out of malice, but by design. Some truths seem buried under layers of questions, each answer only leading to another riddle. This is the paradox of truth that cannot be known. A puzzle where the final answer is so absolute, so untouchable, that no mind, no machine, no person, no God can ever fully hold it. It's easy to believe that the universe is built on answers, like some grand library, waiting for us to flip through its pages. Science teaches us to search for patterns. Philosophy pushes us to question reality, and life experience whispers that the truth is always out there, waiting. But what if the truth isn't out there? What if it's forever locked away, hiding, in plain sight, impossible to fully grasp no matter how close we get? Imagine staring at the horizon on an endless plain. As you walk toward it, it always stays the same distance away. No matter how far or fast you move, the horizon never lets you reach it. That's what this paradox is. The truth is real. It shapes the world around you. It defines your life. But the moment you try to fully understand it, it slips through your fingers. Throughout history, humans have chased the truth like moths drawn to a distant flame. We've built telescopes to peer into the past, sent probes to the edges of space, split atoms to understand the very building blocks of matter. And yet, the deeper we look, the more the universe hides. Quantum mechanics, dark matter, the nature of consciousness. Each discovery only widens the gap between what we know and what we can never truly comprehend. But this isn't just a scientific problem, it's personal. Think about your own life. How well do you really know the people around you? How well do you know yourself? Your memories are flawed, your senses are limited, and even your thoughts are filtered through emotions and biases you don't fully control. What if the truth of who you are, your purpose, your place, your destiny, is something you're biologically or mentally unable to ever know? And even if the truth could be seen, would you believe it? Our minds are shaped for survival, not for understanding the universe's deepest secrets. Perhaps the ultimate truth isn't even something we could recognize if it stood right in front of us, like a fish trying to understand the ocean, or a shadow trying to grasp the shape of the object that casts it. This paradox asks a haunting question. Is truth valuable because it can be known, or because we can never fully reach it? Maybe the search itself is the point. Maybe the pursuit of truth shapes us into who we are, even if the destination remains forever out of reach. Some doors are not meant to be opened, some questions not meant to be answered. The universe, it seems, enjoys keeping its biggest secrets. So the next time you find yourself chasing an answer, in science, in love, in life, remember this paradox. Sometimes the truth isn't lost, sometimes it's right there, and it's simply unknowable. Imagine standing in a room where nothing moves, nothing changes, until you look away. The moment your eyes turn, the world stirs. The moment you return your gaze, everything freezes into place, pretending it never moved at all. This is the heart of the paradox known as observer that isn't watching. At first glance, it sounds simple. The observer, by definition, watches. That's what gives observation meaning. But this paradox flips the idea on its head. What happens when the observer is present but not paying attention? Does reality still unfold the same way? Or does the world only exist when someone or something is truly watching? This thought isn't as abstract as it seems. In quantum mechanics, the famous observer effect suggests that the very act of observing can alter the outcome of an event. Subatomic particles, for instance, behave like waves when unobserved, but snap into position like solid objects the moment they're measured. It raises a strange question. Does the universe behave differently when no one is looking? Now, extend this idea to your own life. Think about all the things that happen beyond your awareness. Conversations you're not part of, moments you never witnessed, lives unfolding in places you'll never go. If you are the observer of your world, how real is reality when you're not watching it? Are those unseen events fully formed and solid, or are they waiting for someone to notice them before they fully exist? The paradox gets even more personal. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror, but your mind drifts off, lost in thought. Your body is there, your eyes are open, but you're not really watching. You are the observer, but your attention has wandered. Are you still observing, or has observation stopped altogether? Is the world still unfolding the same way? Or has it paused, waiting for you to return? In a sense, this paradox also asks us to reflect on the power of attention. Human beings are wired to believe that when they look at something, it is as they see it. Solid, permanent, undeniable. But reality may not be so stable. Attention shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. What you notice becomes your world. What you ignore may as well not exist at all. The observer that isn't watching suggests that the gap between existence and non-existence could be as thin as your attention span. A room filled with objects, a street crowded with people, a night sky full of stars. All of it could be there or not, depending on whether you're truly watching. And if the observer is distracted or absent in thought, does the world momentarily become something else? Something undefined, unanchored, unmeasured? It's not just a question for physicists or philosophers. It's a question for anyone who's ever zoned out during an important conversation or lost track of time staring into space. Are you present if you're not paying attention? Does the world still hold its form without your focus? Or are you trapped in a dance with reality where only one of you is awake at a time? Maybe that's the trick of existence. Reality waits for attention like a stage waits for its audience. And when the observer isn't watching, the world plays to an empty room. So next time you catch your mind wandering, ask yourself, am I truly observing? Or is the world simply pretending to exist while I look away? Imagine waking up one morning to find the world moving backward. The sun sets before it rises. Conversations begin with goodbyes and end with greetings. You feel yourself growing younger, not older. Your memories fade in reverse, unlearning moments you once lived, until even your first breath becomes the last thing you forget. This is the strange reality of time that's stuck in reverse, a paradox that asks, what if time didn't flow forward like an endless river, but instead looped backward, permanently rewinding, undoing everything before it could be done? We often treat time like a reliable road, a one-way street stretching from past to present to future. Every second that passes seems to move us forward, away from where we've been and closer to where we're going. But what if that flow wasn't fixed? What if time had no interest in progress at all? In physics, time is just another dimension, like width or height. And there's nothing in the laws of nature that insists it must only flow forward. In fact, many equations work perfectly well in reverse. At the smallest scales, particles don't seem to care about the direction of time. It's only in the world of human experience that forward motion feels inevitable. But let's step deeper into the paradox. Picture a world where cause and effect switch places. You don't drink water because you're thirsty. You're thirsty because you've already drunk the water. You don't build a house to live in it. You live in it. And then later, you build it. Your decisions wouldn't shape your future. Your future would shape your decisions. Now imagine what that would do to your sense of self. Memory would work backward. You would recall things before they happened and forget them as they unfold. Growth, learning, and even identity would dissolve in reverse, making you a stranger to yourself with every passing moment. Time wouldn't carry you toward new experiences. It would strip them away one by one until nothing was left but your starting point, which would now be your ending. The paradox of time stuck in reverse isn't just about physics. It's about how we perceive existence. Human life is built on the assumption that time moves forward. You're born, you live, you die. Your story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But what if that's just a trick of perception? What if time has no true direction, and your mind simply paints forward motion because it's the only way you can make sense of change? In this reversed world, every goodbye would be your first hello. Every heartbreak would come before the love. Every success would fade before the effort was made. Meaning itself would be flipped. Achievements wouldn't be earned, they'd be erased. Lessons wouldn't be learned, they'd be forgotten. Even your own sense of purpose would dissolve, backwards, until you reached a moment where you hadn't yet begun searching for it. And here's the haunting part. If time truly has no direction, how would you even know? Your memories would match the flow, your senses would adjust, and your mind would call this reverse world normal. Maybe this isn't some distant alternate reality. Maybe this is already happening and you've simply forgotten how it all ends. The paradox of time that's stuck in reverse leaves us with one final thought. Are we moving through time, or is time moving through us? And if the flow ever reversed, would we even notice? Every story you've ever heard, every life you've ever known, every journey you've ever taken, they all have one thing in common: an ending. Whether it's a final page, a last breath, or a goodbye, endings give life meaning. They give stories structure. But what if there was a story that simply never ended? Or stranger still, what if the ending was supposed to happen, but somehow it didn't? Welcome to the paradox of ending that never happened, a puzzle where the conclusion is missing, not because the story is unfinished, but because the ending was erased, skipped, or perhaps never real in the first place. Imagine reading a novel that builds and builds, each chapter pulling you toward a climax. The tension rises, the questions pile up, and you turn the final page expecting closure, but the last page is blank. Not because the author forgot to write it, but because the ending was never part of the story. You hold the book, you flip the pages, and you realize the journey was designed to lead you nowhere. This paradox forces you to rethink how you define an ending. Is an ending the moment something stops? Or is it the moment you accept that it's over? If a story never reaches that point, has it truly ended at all? Or does it continue to exist in an unfinished state, forever stretching forward, waiting for a conclusion that will never come? But this isn't just about stories. It's about life. Imagine living in a world where the concept of ending is missing. Relationships wouldn't break apart. Problems would never resolve. Lessons would never be fully learned. Even death itself would lose meaning, becoming just another event without a final moment. The cycle would loop endlessly, always reaching toward a finish line that isn't there. And in some ways, this is already true. Think about the things you've left unsaid, the people you've drifted away from without a clear goodbye, the projects you started but never finished. Life is full of moments that don't end. They simply fade, unresolved, half forgotten. The paradox suggests this isn't an accident. It might be the natural state of reality, incomplete, open-ended, and unfinished. Now take it a step further. What if the entire universe was built on this principle? Scientists often speak of the heat death of the universe, a time when all stars burn out, all matter decays, and nothing new can happen. But even that isn't an ending, just a state of endless, motionless waiting. If the universe can't truly end, then what does that say about your life, your choices, your story? Maybe the ending was never part of the plan. Maybe the real illusion is the idea that things are supposed to conclude at all. The paradox of the ending that never happened asks one final unsettling question. What if you've already reached your ending and you simply didn't notice? Or even stranger, what if the ending has been postponed indefinitely and you are stuck in the afterglow of a story that was meant to be over but never truly stopped? It forces you to consider that some questions don't have answers, some stories don't have final chapters, and some endings are destined to be missing, not because you lost them, but because they were never meant to be found. So the next time you wait for closure, for a goodbye, for the perfect ending, ask yourself, is the ending really out there? Or was the story never meant to end in the first place? Imagine waking up one morning, opening your eyes, and realizing the thoughts running through your mind aren't your own. The memories feel unfamiliar. Your emotions seem detached. The voice narrating your life sounds like a stranger whispering in your head. You look at your hands, your surroundings, even your face in the mirror, but deep inside, you know this consciousness doesn't belong to you. This is the unsettling paradox of consciousness that's not yours. A puzzle that asks, what if the awareness you call you isn't really yours at all? What if your mind is being lived through, borrowed by, or shared with something else? Most people take consciousness for granted. You think your thoughts, you feel your emotions, you observe the world, and you call this experience being you. But the truth is, consciousness is one of the strangest mysteries in existence. Science can map the brain, track its signals, and explain its structure. But no one truly knows why these signals create a sense of self. Why do atoms and neurons form something as vivid and personal as you? Now imagine that this you isn't fixed. What if consciousness isn't owned, but rented? What if your thoughts are simply passing through, like radio waves being picked up by your brain, rather than generated by it? What if the person living inside your head is not the real owner of your body? It sounds impossible, but the cracks in the idea of self are already visible. You've experienced thoughts that seem to appear from nowhere. You've felt emotions that don't seem to fit the moment. You've had dreams where you act like someone else, or even moments of déjà vu where reality feels briefly misaligned. All of these could be hints that the consciousness you think is yours might not be. And the question grows deeper. If you can't fully control your thoughts, are they even yours? If your mind is shaped by your past, your biology, and your environment, where is the you in all of that? Could your mind simply be a passenger, temporarily occupying a space you were never meant to own? Some ancient philosophies believed exactly this, that the self is an illusion and consciousness moves like the wind, shifting between bodies, moments, and lives, never truly belonging to any one person. The mind you call yours could just be the latest chapter in a long story written by something far larger and older than you can imagine. And if that's true, the paradox leaves one final twist. What if you've already felt it? That eerie sensation of standing in your own life and not fully recognizing it. That quiet thought, this isn't me. That moment when you act, speak, or choose something, and afterward wonder, why did I do that? Maybe those weren't accidents. Maybe they were reminders. Maybe the consciousness behind your eyes is a visitor, not a resident. So ask yourself this. If your thoughts aren't yours, your memories are borrowed, and your emotions are on loan, then who or what is truly living your life? The paradox of consciousness that's not yours doesn't give easy answers. It only leaves you with a haunting idea. You might not be who you think you are, and the voice inside your head might not be your own.